Hey everyone, this is going to be a quick review on the Cold Steel Spike Hawk. The edge comes reasonably sharp. I was able to give this a better edge, but for a starting edge, it wasn't bad, and it definitely would cut and chop just fine. And if you were throwing this, it would stick just fine. This one here is called the Spike Hawk for obvious reasons. It has a spike on the back. This spike obviously would make one heck of a weapon, but also this can have utility purposes as well. I actually use the spike in the winter for when salt has frozen together inside of our containers and the salt needs spreaded. So I use this to chip away at the salt to break it apart, and then I can spread the salt. So obviously this here has that kind of purpose in mind, being able to chip away at things like that. This could also probably be used as a mariner's spike. For those of you who don't know, a mariner's spike is a spike used to undo knots in rope, typically of course used on boats, thus the name mariner's spike. But that could probably be used pretty well as a mariner's spike. Also, this here could be used as an awl pretty well to be able to poke holes in things. And probably also for drilling type purposes. I haven't tested that, but probably could work for that pretty well. When you're using a tomahawk or any weapon that has a spike off of the back, you have to be careful with things like this. Because when you're actually using this here could actually injure you if you're not careful. So you're using the tomahawk and all of a sudden you go back, and as you'll notice, that spike is pointed right at my back. It's within inches. So that's something you have to be careful of with these tomahawks, is poking yourself with this here. And I'm sure that if you really went back really quick, you could actually probably stab yourself in the back. It would be interesting to see how this spike would deal with armor, such as chainmail or things like that. Obviously, if you were fighting someone in thick clothing that the edge just isn't making its way through as well, that spike would definitely make its way through. I would be interested to see how well this spike would deal with armor and things like that. Especially things like chainmail. I think this would probably do really well against chainmail. It's a spike. It's very similar to the back of weapons like warhammers. Very similar. Also, for fighting purposes, if fighting someone in something thick, such as probably like leather armor, and I'm sure maybe even really thick winter clothing, historically speaking, then while this edge may not make its way through, that spike would. Also, depending on how you use it, you can strike with the edge, you can strike with the spike in backhanding motions, even upward motions like this. There's a lot of ways you can use it. You can use it for hooking. There's just a lot of ways you can use the spike. Another nice thing about the spike is if you are throwing, it gives you two spots that you can hit. You can hit with the edge, you can hit with the spike. So if you're throwing and maybe it over rotates, it can stick that way. If you're throwing it this way and it doesn't hit with the spike, you can hit with the edge. It gives you two chances of hitting the target. For competition, that doesn't really matter because the back spike, if you stick with it, does not count. It only counts with your front edge, so even if you stick that way, it doesn't matter. The handles come insanely long. This is not the factory handle because I actually broke the factory handle throwing it. But this here is very similar in length to the factory handle. This is a 20-inch handle. The factory handle was 22 inches, so very similar in length. Now, I think that's good that the handles come so long because it gives you a lot of options. If you're using this for camping or whatever else, you may want the longer handle for chopping purposes. Once again, be careful with that spike. If you have to chip into something, chip away at things, then that spike will definitely help there as well. If you are going to throw this tomahawk, you'll probably want to shorten the handle to something more like this. This is a 13-inch handle. This here is minimum for competition, but shorter handles are generally better for throwing at the distances used for competition. Most people regard the shorter handles as pretty much perfect for throwing, so that's something to keep in mind as well. The steel is 1055, it holds a good edge. The blade length on this is 3 1/16 inches, and the weight is 1 pound, 7.7 ounces, so not too bad at all. Just as the rest of the Tomahawks, the handle fit wasn't great on this at all. The handle was actually loose out of box, so I had to fit that. This Tomahawk, just as the rest of the Tomahawks, comes with a set screw. The place for the set screw on this one is on the side, right there. And in my opinion, it's garbage. It doesn't work. The set screw will give the impression that it is tighter, and it does fit slightly tighter. The problem is, though, it's not enough to make a big difference. So when you're throwing it, if the handle wants to come out, it still will come out. The only problem is now that set screw is going to gouge a nice little groove into your handle, so basically creating more damage. This is an example of a handle that's taken that damage right there from the set screw, as you can see. So the set screw doesn't really help, it just creates more damage because it creates that gouge, plus it still takes the damage that it would normally take. So in my opinion then, the set screw doesn't work at all. What I do with these is I actually fit the handle and then I take a rubber mallet and I tap right on here to give it an even tighter fit. Of course, you can also tap it like this on the ground, which also gives it a good fit, but I just like being able to take and tap on that. Of course, be careful. The stock handles are very thin. I don't know why. You can fit a thicker handle in there, and that's what I did with this one right here. So if you're going to use the stock handles, I recommend wrapping tape or something on them. This is actually tennis racket tape, but hockey tape, athletic tape, something like that. Even paracord would be a good option to be able to thicken up the grip to make it more comfortable for chopping, especially if you have larger hands. The grain on these handles is not great out of box. This is a Cold Steel Norse Hawk, but it has a factory handle on it still, so that's why I'm showing it. And as you can see, the grain is very much angular. Ideally, on a tomahawk or any axe, you want the grain to be this way. So pretty much the direction of the blade. That's ideal. Angular is second best, and horizontal is the worst. The Spike Hawk, just as pretty much all the traditional tomahawks that they sell, does not come with a sheath. So I bought this one here. This is leather. I really like this sheath. This is sold by Cold Steel as well. They don't have a nylon sheath option that I saw. They do have a nylon sheath option for the Pipe Hawk, so that would cover the blade, but your spike is still not going to be covered. You could also get a Kydex sheath, which I make, and that's pretty much your sheath options. This Tomahawk comes with a paint finish, which I wasn't fond of. The paint will wear off on the contact points, obviously, but the paint is shiny black, which I was not fond of the look of it. It was wearing off anyways, so I just took it off completely. This is more prone to rusting, but keep it oiled and it's not a big deal. It should be said that even with the paint on there, you will still have rust. It just won't be on the spots that the paint is. So, on the edge, you're going to have rust. Anywhere that contacts wood, it will wear off and it will rust. So the paint just minimizes where the rust will be. It doesn't eliminate it completely. With the paint finish on all of these Tomahawks, it says made in Taiwan right on the blade, which I don't like. However, the good thing is, if you do decide to take the paint finish off like I did, it's just scratched into the paint, it's not scratched into the metal. So none of my Tomahawks say made in Taiwan on them. So that's pretty much it. That's the review on the Cold Steel Spike Hawk. You can get these for around $25, sometimes less depending on where you shop, and for that price, I think it's a great Tomahawk. The handle has to definitely be addressed, but not a bad Tomahawk at all. So that's pretty much it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll see you next video. See ya!